Making It Work is brought to you by the Max Pree Center for Leadership at Fuller Theological Seminary and the Theology of Work Project.
Welcome to Making It Work.
Through conversation, scripture, and stories, we invite God into work's biggest challenges so that you can live out your purpose in the workplace.
I'm Mark Roberts.
And I'm Leah Archibald. And this is Making It Work. You might feel out of place praying at work or offering to pray for someone you work with. But some Christians, including our guest today, Barbara Myrick, credit prayer at work with stronger relationships and even better business results. Barbara Myrick is the president of B&M Construction Inc. Barbara has grown the company to become one of the most respected construction companies in Colorado. She's obtained many awards in her industry, with the most recent being the 2020 Enterprising Woman of the Year, 2018 Southern Colorado Women's Chamber of Commerce Minority Business of the Year, and the 2018 Women's Veterans Business Enterprise of the Year, given by JPMorgan Chase Co. and the National Veteran-Owned Business Association. Barbara believes in people and community and in remembering that every individual has a contribution to offer. And she's here today to talk to us about the power of prayer at work. Barbara, welcome to the Making It Work podcast.
Well, good morning and good afternoon, wherever we are located. What an opportunity just to get together and have a conversation about prayer in the workplace. And it is such a part of me, and not just at work, but everywhere I go.
Well, could you start off by giving us an image of what prayer has done in you and for your workplace?
So prayer just impacted me from a child. My grandmother was a prayer warrior. She walked out her faith in front of me. She was a widow, a young widow with 5 kids that she had to raise back in the 30s. And I watched her just take God's word and raise 5 children, single in that day, and what they became as an individual. But she took me to church. She talked about God, the importance of prayer, the importance of faith, the importance of forgiveness, the importance of love. And so she really set that foundation for me. And I really didn't know when I started praying. And then one day God showed me as I was having a meltdown about life. And I think I was probably about 35, 40, and I'm standing in the kitchen and having a meltdown about life. And I said to God, where are you? And he took me back to when I was a child, of how he just walked me all of that time through life and the struggles that he knew I would face in life. And so when he brought that remembrance back to me, I just said, oh my gosh, you've been with me all the time. He said, you've been praying for a long time. And then I joined a church out here in Colorado, and I sat in the back because I went to many churches. And this time the last church I was in, I was angry. I was sitting in the pew angry. And so one day he said, it's time for you to leave this church. And I was just like, oh. But, he said, I need you to have a relationship with me, not religion. And so he took me to another church, and I sat in the back of the church. I'm sitting in the back of the church because, I didn't want to get back involved in the church. And this woman comes up to me, and she says, we're looking for members of the prayer team. Would you like to be on the prayer team? And I'm like, prayer team? And I said to her, I'll pray about it. So
good answer.
I know, good answer, right? So a couple weeks later, she came to me and she said, have you made a decision? And I said, I have to confess, I haven't prayed about it. I said, this is new to me, praying for other people. And she said, but I think you already do it. And I just said, oh, okay. So one morning I was driving up the road. It was about 4:30 in the morning. I had to be at Denver at 6. And my phone just kept ringing. I had a proposal writer someone in her family was placed on life support, and I had a sister calling me crying about something. And then finally on the third call, I finally said to God, if this means the phone not ringing the rest of the day, I will do what you've called me to do. And if you've called me to pray, then that's what I'm going to do. But please, can I get to my meeting? And the phone stopped ringing. So I went to this woman and I just said, that's my calling, and I'll just pray. And I'll join the prayer team.
Sounds like you developed a really robust personal relationship with God through your prayer. How did you bring that relationship to God through prayer into your workplace?
So I had no choice, because I was dealing with so many adversaries that I think people don't pay attention to. And now it's spiritual warfare. I've learned it's just spiritual warfare. I would walk into the building and it was just chaos every day. Every day I came in and I'm just like, it's not supposed to be this way, Lord. You just said, you was going to do this and this and this, and we were going to grow, and it was going to be a blessing to community and people. And he said, yeah, but you forgot that you have to pray every day. Your morning, you get up and thank me for what, at home and stuff like that. But when you walk in this place, you still have to pray about the things that's going to happen today, because I already know what's going to happen. You don't. And so at that point, I said to him, so people won't receive it. He said, I didn't tell you to preach to them. I just told you to pray over this place. You might think you plant the seeds. I'm the one that grows them. So he had said to me, I need you to get out of the way. And I just need you to be obedient to what I would have you to do, not what you think you're supposed to do. And so at that point, I would come in and I would just pray. I would pray, and then I would think, okay, I need to pray where people can see me. He said, no. You can pray with your door closed and ask for every room to be blessed and every stud to be blessed. He said, but I need you to pray so my covering so I can dwell within this place. And after that, he said, you need to not be ashamed of your faith. They already know there's something different about you, because they'll sit at the table and have potty mouths and you'll just look at them and you don't judge them. You just look at them. And so they know that there's something different about you. And so you need to share who I am to you. Whether they have a relationship with me or not, you need to be that light.
Mark, this relationship with prayer work actually sounds like it takes a lot of the weight off of the necessity to pray for people at work. Because I know, many listeners that we talk to just feel this heaviness of, do I have to do it all in one shot, like prayer and evangelizing and closing the deal? Mark, I know you've talked to many Christians in the workplace about how they integrate their faith at work, or whether they do it at all. Do you think this is a common fear among Christians, that the fear of, I have to pray in front of everybody and I have to get everything right?
Well, it's interesting, Leah. I sort of have a twofold answer, and it comes largely from my pastoral experience. I must admit, when I started pastoring a church, when I was a senior pastor, I didn't really think much about people praying at work. I think I was pretty much thinking there's sort of work over here and faith over here. And so I was in that kind of place. And I remember meeting with a guy, major executive, literally the guy who's running Lexus in the United States. And, I just casually asked him, does your faith make any difference to your work? Expecting him basically to say, well, I try to be a good person. He said, oh, yeah, I pray for my work every day. I said, you do? What do you pray? And he went this whole litany. Well, at first I start praying for my staff, and then our suppliers and our vendors, and he went on and on and on. I said, you pray for all those people every day? Oh, yeah. This is a secular major auto company. And I must admit, I was shocked. And then I admit I was shocked at my own shockedness. Like, of course, a brother should be praying about all the stuff in his life, but it never dawned on me. So partly I learned from not only him, but others, actually a lot of our people do pray at work in ways that I never expected. But then there's a whole bunch of other people who pretty much feel guilty and confused, right? They say, I know I should pray at work. I don't know what to do. That seems weird, or I don't have a pattern, or, and so I think partly what we're talking about here, and Barbara, what you're modeling is just going to be so important for people who say, wow, I really want to do this. I just don't know. I kind of don't know what to do. I don't know how to get started.
Barbara, why don't you answer that? How do you get started praying for your work?
God says first we are to seek the kingdom of heaven. And so I seek him for wisdom and understanding. We always ask about wisdom and understanding, but he's given us power. He's our counselor. We should have reverence to him. It's so much that I had to identify and say, God, you want me to do this. I need you to help me do this and show me how to do this. And sometimes it means you going in early in the morning and walking through the building and praying over each file that may be sitting on someone's desk that they're overwhelmed, and just God help them not be overwhelmed with what they have to do right now. Can you open their eyes so it could be easier? He would just say to me, I just need you to be a servant. You might they come in late, frustrated, you bring them a bottle of water or a coffee, and just his presence is already there, and you're just standing there I'm standing there having a conversation with them, and I'm touching things along the way and asking God to help them with that. But he's taught me to just come in early. Even maybe on the weekends, he'll wake me up and say, I need you to go and pray. And I'm saying, God, it's Saturday morning. And he's saying, no, I need you to go, because I've learned too that he already knows what we're going to deal with in the next week. We shouldn't put that on the back burner. I just learned to get up and go pray. He's just taught me to trust in him, and I've just seen so much happen within the walls, and I've seen so many people's lives change because of it.
So this type of prayer, what you mentioned, Mark, and what Barbara just described, I might describe it as like incognito prayer. I'm wondering, Barbara, how do you transition from incognito prayer to a time where you're actually asking an employee or a coworker if you could pray for them, like bringing that prayer out into the open? How do you do that?
So what I used to ask, honestly, at first, and then people would get offended. And so God had said to me, it's not the time. And I said, okay. So he said, my timing is perfect. So I wind up going to an event, and there was an organization there that they have chaplains that come to your company. And they don't come to preach God's word. They just really come to help minister, because I had become so overwhelmed because I wanted to pray for every employee. And so I brought this organization in, and God's timing was perfect, because they came in not with the mindset of, we're going to pray with you, we're going to preach to you. They came in and built relationships with the employees. And during those relationships, the employees started sharing. And the employees started asking for prayer. And when those individuals weren't around and they needed prayer, or something like tragic happened, that they lost a parent while they were at work, and they would be upset, and I would walk up and they just look, and I just say, can I pray with you? Can I just pray that God would give you peace during this here season, that he's going to walk beside you And with that, since then I found out like some of them have given their life to the Lord, and I'm just like, oh my gosh. But I had to take a different approach because I didn't want people to get offended. And just a couple of weeks ago, I was talking to one of my employees. Honestly, just blew my mind. I just had to sit, and we were on Teams, and I said to him, you look tired. Now, I was fasting at that time, and I said, you look tired. And he said, I don't want you to think that I'm weird, but I've been fasting. And I just started crying. And I said, what are you fasting for? And he said, purpose. I need to figure out what my purpose is. What am I supposed to be doing in this world? What God? And I said, God, did you just say God? I mean, I'm just like, oh my God, I just started crying. And I just said to him, God's going to bless you beyond your imagination for your sacrifice. And he just looked at me. And he just said, I've never done it before, and it's because this organization is involved in his life. And he has older men that know and have experienced God's love that is sharing all of that with him. And he just says, I wanted to know what that felt like. I wanted to have a piece of that.
I love the story of bringing someone else in to kind of build this bridge, because then it's not all on you as a leader of the organization, which, Mark, I can imagine that would be a big burden. You know, you've been a senior pastor. I'm sure that's a huge burden, feeling like you're the one responsible for initiating prayer with every individual in your organization.
True. And so it really helps to have others with you. You know, I'm struck, Barbara, by a couple of things. I think you've given us, from your example, two really practical things to do. And one is go to the place where it happens and pray. I know so many people who do what you do. And, you know, one could say, wait a minute, God's everywhere. Can't you just sit home and pray? Do you have to go to the office? And of course, you don't have to. But I think what you've experienced, and so many others have, is there's something about being in that place where the people are sitting, where they're doing their work, that energizes our prayers and helps us to pray. And so that's one thing. Just, you know, so if someone says, I don't know where to get started, you know, get into your office a little early. You don't want to be doing this when everybody's around. Second thing you said, it's about relationships with people out of which then prayer can happen. So it's not just walking up to the strangers at work and saying, how can I pray for you? It's getting to know them and their needs and their concerns. And then prayer can feel like a normal way of caring for a person. I mean, I worked most of my life in Christian organizations where it wouldn't be that odd to offer to pray for people. But I think of other situations, the gym I used to work out in where most of the guys weren't Christian. And, you know, I get to know them and you know, how you doing? And in time, guys would share stuff. I remember one guy said, you know, my mom is pretty sick and really worried about her. And he and I had really never talked about faith before. But I'd say, you know, I pray for folk. Could I be okay if, you know, next week I pray for you and your mom? And he was totally into that. I think if we hadn't had the relationship, it wouldn't have worked. So sometimes it really helps to be in the place. Barbara, you modeled that. Sometimes, always it helps to get to know the people so you can pray for them in the context of relationship. I think you're giving us some great steps forward.
What I'm also hearing, Barbara, is that you didn't jump into this relationship where you just said you were on Teams with your coworker and you immediately started praying for him. You didn't jump into this prayer opportunity before having a relationship with him, and you were probably praying for him before that opportunity over Teams came up. You know, so you probably had a relationship with him in prayer even before he knew it.
You know, that's so true. I had 5 teams across the country, and we would have a call-in line on Monday mornings. And everyone had the opportunity to call in. Even if they didn't call in, God still said, you will pray over those teams. And you will call each one of their names out and just be a blessing to them. And, when I started calling their names out, some would call me with problems and ask, can you help me? And some would ask for prayer. And that just reinforces what God says, that He will grow those gardens. We're just supposed to be the light, and so to see it all unfold was such a blessing. It's such a blessing. It's still a blessing to me, even with the individuals that I have now. That I just, okay, God, what do you want me to say to them today, right? And so I just see God's hand on it. I see Him at work. I see Him at work every day. Every day I see Him at work.
Barbara and Leah, don't you wish we had like a video of Jesus at work? In the carpentry work. I don't mean later on, but just to watch for the day and hear the video. Because, I can imagine when I'm beginning to think about it, yeah, he's going to be talking to his father as he works. He's like, oh, Father, what do I do with this warped board? Or what do I do with this customer who's been so unreasonable? And and then I can imagine him sharing his joy, I love that chair I just made. We hardly get that. But you got to imagine that that's what Jesus was doing for a whole lot of years, having conversation with his heavenly Father about the stuff he was doing, right?
I also imagine that a prayerful relationship through work, like you're imagining Jesus had, was had a building effect to the ministry that he did later that was more public. I mean, Barbara, I imagine for you, there's a building up process through prayer that's led to more success in your work.
It really has. And I just look at what he's doing and allowing me, the places he's allowing me to go right now, and the tables he allowed me to get invited to sit at. And observe. And, I'm part of several organizations, but to sit and have a conversation in a meeting and people are struggling. And I just say, I have to stop for a minute right now, and I just need to pray over this. I need to pray over our group and what decisions we're going to make and our thought patterns, and pray for those that are struggling at this table right now, because I just feel somebody is struggling right now. And that, can I just pray? And they'll just look at me. When COVID was going on and I was sitting on board meetings, and I seen so much anxiety and worriness and depression and discouragement going on, that I just said, I just have to pray before we can move further on in this here meeting. And, people were open to it. And so, with that, I've just learned that my business is a ministry. And the committees and stuff that he put me on, it's a ministry. And at first I couldn't get my head around this prayer and interceding, but he said it's a ministry. You have to embrace it as a ministry. It's not what you think it is. I've called people into the kingdom in different sectors, from government to business to teaching. So it's a ministry. And I just said, okay, he has definitely grown me to be okay with who he called me to be. Praying for others is so, it's a blessing to me too. And, one thing I try not to do is tell somebody, I'm going to pray for you. And I've learned not to say that. I just say to them, I've learned to say, I'm going to pray for you, but can we stop right now and let me pray for you now? Because I know if I get busy during the day, I'll forget their name. I'll forget where. I know I'm supposed to pray for them, but I'll forget all the things that brought us together for God to put it in my heart to pray for them. And it's just, I had an employee who almost lost his son this year in a car accident. And this was a family that, one of my longest employees has been with me 13 years. And they didn't know what to do. And God said, you're going to have to walk them through this. And I said, well, I have HR for this. And he said, no, they trust you. You're going to walk them through this. You're going to pray with them. You're going to, and so they were so worried about their son in the hospital. They were sitting at the hospital and they hadn't eaten for like 4 days. And my spirit said, you need to send a meal to not just them, but the staff at the hospital has been taking care of the son. And I sent a whole complete meal, and they called me up crying and said, we forgot to eat. And thank you. And so, we prayed together. They cried. We prayed together. We all cried together. And I just said, God has a purpose for his life. And what we would see in the flesh, that this child would probably never recover and have all of these disabilities, up and walking, and just, it was a God thing. And so, glory be to God.
If somebody came in, if this was a radio show and they just tuned in now, they'd probably be thinking, oh, Barbara's their pastor. In a real sense, you are their pastor. I mean, let's be clear. I mean, you're not officially the pastor of the church, but I'm just so struck by the fact that you're talking about caring about people, praying for people as the boss of a successful construction company, and you do serious business, which I just think is so such an encouragement, folks. Barbara, I do have a question, and you, first of all, you can correct me if my assumption's wrong, but you're in construction. Now, I tend to think of construction as kind of like a lot of men mostly, and at least in my part of the world, the bosses tend to be white. You're a Black woman in that field. I'm really interested. Has praying helped you to deal with some of the cultural and personal challenges that I'd expect have come your way?
It has. I used to cry a lot. Sometimes I still cry. But God sustains me every day, every challenge. And he just gives me the victory. And he reminds me that the battle is not mine, that it is his, and that he puts the non-educated and unqualified in places that we think we don't belong or we don't fit. And he just says, I have a purpose for you. And it makes me grateful. And so I've been told some things that I think harsh things that people say to people. And I would go in my office and cry. And then he said, enough sulking, dry your face, let's go. Let's go, because I've called you. And so it's funny that you would ask that, because I just opened another company, and it's for fiber infrastructure. And so people are looking at the money that's going to be made. I'm looking at the lives that's going to be touched. When I look at rural America that don't have access to health care, they can have telehealth. Somebody can call them and they can, or the children in rural America or urban America that don't have access to education and advanced classes, they'll have access. And so last week, he took me to the same environment. And I walked in the room and I said, Lord, and he said, but you're prepared this time. You're not going to do all that crying this time because you've already done it. You already know where I'm going to plant your feet. And I need you to be open to this. And I just said to him, thank you so much for loving me. Thank you so much for protecting me. But I have done a lot of crying, but you know what? Prayer just seems to heal the wounds for me. And I remember that, you know, we are a royal priesthood. We are adopted into his family. I'm a princess. I'm part of royalty. And I have to remember that when I get in those places where people say that you're a nobody or you don't belong here, because God has called me here. So I have struggled, but prayer has really helped me get through a lot of those challenges where, you know, God says to bless them. Those that spitefully use you, those that say wrong things against you, you're still supposed to bless them. And he take me back to scripture, you know.
Is there a particular scripture, Barbara, that you lean on in these cases?
That he is my shepherd. That he will set a table before me in the presence of my enemies. That he will anoint my head with oil, my cup will runneth over. And so I go back to that 23rd Psalm. And I put myself where David was and how God just protected him and set a table before the presence of his enemies. And I just remember that. And I just say, thank you for being my shepherd. Thank you for never leaving me. Thank you for never forsaking me. And thank you for just loving me for Barbara.
Thank you for sharing that. It's very touching and it makes a lot of sense. And I just think there are a lot of folk in our world today, kind of like you, who maybe didn't come from privilege and opportunity, but God has called them and they're being faithful. But sometimes it's really hard. And so your example of faithfulness and prayer in that and letting God affirm who you are so you can keep doing the thing to which he's called you. That's just a great encouragement, I'm sure.
I feel very encouraged. With this idea of bringing God to the table. You know, Barbara, you quoted the 23rd Psalm. He sets a table for me in the presence of my enemies. And I imagine you going into that boardroom table where you're facing maybe, you don't want to say enemies, but, you know, maybe some pushback there. I love the idea that through prayer in the workplace, we can really invite God into those boardrooms or, you know, around those tables where really I might not feel like personally that I have the wherewithal to deal with it. But through prayer, I can get the support of God who's like a shepherd.
Yeah.
Barbara, where do you feel like God is leading you next in your journey of prayer at work?
To guide the broken and those that have been hurt by churches, hurt by pastors, hurt by religion. And so a couple months ago, he said to me, You've cleaned up and it's time for you to move. I'm going to bring the broken. And I said, oh, what is that going to look like? And he said, I just need you to be open to the people that I'm bringing. And the first person he brought was an agnostic person that he knows God, he knows the word.
And this is one of your new employees?
One of my new employees, and so broken from church and religion. And he says to me, I see you have a lot of religion things around here. You got verses from the Bible. And I said to him, newsflash, I don't do religion. And he looked at me. I said, I do a relationship with God. I said, so if you think 4 walls determines who I am, no. I said, I'm the church. God has called Christians to be the church. It is not 4 walls that we come together on Sunday or whatever day you go to church. And so he just looked at me. He said, so you're the church? And I said, yeah. And you're his church too. And I went on about my business. Then he came in my office a couple days later and he was saying something. And I said, I'm sorry that you experienced church hurt and that you were homeless. And he just looked at me like, how would you know those things? Because I had said to God, if you're going to have me do this, you got to give me a little insight on who I'm dealing with so that I can not offend them and that I can speak in love and that I don't want to judge them. I want to speak in love and I want to encourage them. And so now with that, he's starting to share a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. And I just said, God said, you just keep being a light to him. You just keep shining, you keep blessing him, and you just keep moving. And so then he brought into people with records that people won't hire. And I said, so how am I supposed to do this? Lord, they have no skill set. He said it's called on-the-job training, and you're going to teach them a skill. And he said they're going to be loyal. And I just said, okay. And you know, they haven't missed a day in work. They come in every day smiling. And yesterday, I brought a truck 6 weeks ago in Oklahoma, and we've been waiting for the truck to get delivered, but they couldn't deliver the truck. So Tuesday, God said to me, you have a vendor, you have trucks always shipped to your other locations. Call the vendor and see if he could pick the truck up. That was Tuesday. The truck was delivered yesterday. And we were standing out there just like, I said, this is nobody but God. Because they were just like, it got delivered in a day, but God let me see their happiness. They were smiling and they just said, Barb, this is such a nice truck. And I just said, do you like the truck? They said, oh my God, it holds everything. Who picked the truck out? And I said, I did. And they just said, oh my God, oh my God. And so they haven't missed a day of work. They see they see God all day, because I just talk about God all day and his blessings. And I just say, this is a blessing, this is a blessing, this is a blessing. And they just look at me, and God just said, you just keep being that light to them. You keep being that light, and never judge them. Give them always constructive criticism. Encourage them because they're so broken. Encourage them that they can learn this craft and that they can grow with this company. Just do that. And then I'll handle the rest. And he's just sending them. And last night I said to him, okay, you keep sending these people. I need you to bring the contracts with it. And I need you, I'm having this conversation with him. And he said, don't you worry about it. Don't you worry about that. I need you to just keep pouring into them and encouraging them and blessing them.
What I hear so much from you, Barbara, is we often think of prayer as a one way, like I'm doing this, I'm praying, I'm getting my word in with God. But what I hear from you is really this two-way communication that prayer is for you, both talking and listening.
I think, so when I look at my relationship with God, I look at him like, I don't want to be all dressed up. I want him, he already knows who I am, but I don't, I tell some friends of mine, God doesn't look at your posture with a pressed shirt and a tie and your correct vocabulary. I said, he looks at our hearts. And I said, so I look at my relationship with God as a friend. Like, sometimes I'm just like, really? You're going to have me do that? I can't believe you're going to have me do that. And then he'll explain to me why he's having me do that. And so I'm having a constant conversation, because I think when we want to talk all the time, but if we don't have our ears open to listening to what he has to say and why things are going the way they are, we miss it. And when we miss it, we have to go back around the corner again to get it. You know, I don't like reruns. And I don't like repeats and scratch records. I just said, okay, I didn't get it the first time. I've learned over the years to stop and listen to what he has to say and don't be in a hurry. Because sometimes I think when we, if it's a one-sided relationship and we're just talking and telling him, he's not getting no glory. If we're just saying God, I just think it's we become complacent and become complainers, and so I've just learned over the years, okay, God's not talking. There's a reason why. I can't get in a hurry because I mess it up. So I've just learned to say, God, you know what I need. I know you will supply according to your riches and glory. I know this. But can you kind of like hurry up here, because I'm stuck here for a minute. And he'll say to me in a nice soft voice, my timing is perfect. Mm-hmm. And so just like we have relationships with people and interaction, that's the kind of relationship God appreciates for everyone to have with him. Not just come and ask and ask and ask, but he wants us to listen, because he speaks to all of us. I think sometimes we just get so busy with the world that we can't hear what he's saying. And I've just learned over the years to really listen to what he has to say.
I think that's a great place to sum up prayer at work. You know, we get so busy, but we got to slow down and listen. Barbara, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today. This has been a real joy. Thank you.
Yes,
thank you. Thank you for inviting me. This is like my favorite subject.
We can tell you do great. We'd love to have you talk about it.
Oh, my favorite subject.
That's our show. Don't miss the next episode. Be sure to subscribe.
And if you like what you've heard, please leave a review. We'd love to hear from you, and it helps other people find us. Thanks for listening.